We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. Everything was down to the wire this week. We're recording a day later than we usually do. We're recording on a Tuesday this week.
What's your damage, boy? How come we're going late?
Yeah, well, so normally I work on the topic list on Sunday night and get everything written up early on Monday morning. But yeah, this Sunday we did my niece's birthday party, and I stuck around afterwards to help clean everything up and that, so I didn't get to work on the topic list on Sunday night, and I was already kind of tired from the week, so there was no way Monday morning was happening, so that's why I asked Tom to delay till Tuesday this week. And then on top of that, I just changed my internet and TV service, and they're like, oh, there'll be an interruption for, about 10 minutes at the most, and this was happening at 4:45. I'm like, okay, shouldn't be a problem. So 5:30 rolls around, still don't have internet back. So I was on the live chat, and yeah, that got set up 10 minutes before we're recording. So all down to the wire, but here we are.
We are here. Yes. Yes. We're here.
In body, if not in mind.
I don't understand. I had a weird day, where I just couldn't get it together. All day long,
happens.
it felt like I was in need of a nap. Yep. And I tried to take a nap, and I was like, I'm not really tired. But I totally feel like I still need a nap. I don't know. I did go to Home Depot today, which is something I don't normally do. And it's always fun to kind of roam through there and have so many employees ignore you.
Yes. I always like the aroma in a Home Depot, though.
I will cut wood and just put it in my car.
Yeah.
just to make it smell like fresh cut wood. I love that smell. All right, this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions and all things wood related, I guess, because we like.
I'm not going to promise that. I don't know a lot about woodworking.
Dovetail joints? They exist.
They do?
I think they're magic. I see the guys cut them and they put them together. I'm like, oh, how come it didn't break? Because it looks like it should break.
For that material and equipment, I actually pronounce router as router. That is, even in Canada, we call those routers.
They're all called routers, dude. We just can't.
That's an actual router. Thing that connects you to the internet, that's a router.
No, it's not. It's not. It's not. Okay, whatever.
You don't get your kicks on Route 66.
No, you got Route 66.
Yeah,
I understand that. Yeah.
It's root.
But isn't root a bad word in your English?
Only in Australia.
Yeah. They're weird down there. All right. This is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You go to www.avrant.com and leave us a comment there if that website is working, which it may or may not be at any given point in my life.
We're going to try.
No. We're trying. Facebook.com/AVRant podcast is a very good place to get a hold of us. YouTube.com/AVRant is a very good place for us not to ever notice your comment ever, because we won't read it because YouTube.
I do actually see them, but
do you? I don't even see them. I don't even see them pop up.
Very slow on any replies that I get.
I don't think I've ever seen a comment. I mean, I know they exist. I've clicked into a video.
Yeah.
To just see what I just did it recently. I was like, you know what? I haven't watched one of our videos in forever. Let's see the first couple of minutes of it, so I could see what the quality was. I'm like, oh, this is pretty good. I mean, clearly for free, you're getting all of your money's worth.
That's right.
But it's way better than a lot of the stuff I see on YouTube. That's for sure. So yay, Rob, good job. You can also hit us up directly. Rob at avrant.com. His Twitter is at FirstReflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter is at avrant_Tom. And somebody did tweet me.
Yes, they did.
And I forwarded it to you.
You forwarded it to me. And he did get in touch with me directly. So
did he? Okay, I know. Yes. Because I didn't see he didn't CC you on it or whatever. Also at you, whatever it's called these days on the Twitterverse place. I don't know. So I just want to make sure we got on the question list because it was a question of some sort.
Well, it'll be on next week's question list because it came in on a Monday.
That's right.
I cut it off on Sunday night.
This is this whole doing podcast Tuesday night screws me up for
It
the
does.
entire week. Like, I am going to be so discombobulated. All right, let's get into this. We want to thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, you have to support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to www.avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, which should be there.
Yep. Our Patreon link is back on the desktop version anyway. I have no idea about the mobile version. I didn't look.
Yeah, I don't know. So Richard and Jeff both went to the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and left us a PayPal donation. So we want to thank Richard and Jeff as our listeners of the week.
Yeah, Richard B and Jeff B. Not related as far as I know. Different last names. But both the first initial of B on the last name there. Thank you very much for those donations.
Yeah. We also want to thank our 70 patrons over at patreon.com. Patreon is a service where you can subscribe, and we'll take a monthly pull from your bank account and give it to whichever creators that you want to, content creators that you want to support. So thank you to our 70 patrons.
Yeah, cool to see that number tick up over 70 now. So that's patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you would like to sign up.
Technically over 70 is actually 70.
Well, yeah. The number in the front changed.
Over 70. It would be over 70.
All right.
Over 70.
Higher than the 60s. There. That is an accurate
You know how you kind of, if you fall down the YouTube hole of watching videos, I clicked on a video that was I don't know the guy's name, the Taika guy who directed Thor Ragnarok.
Oh, okay. Taika Waititi.
Yeah, him. He was fascinating to listen. I would like to buy that guy a drink. My favorite part of any of the interviews that I watch, which I just let him play as I was doing other work in the background, is he's like, I take scripts as more of a suggestion.
Okay.
It's like, as inspiration. like now, how can we now make this funny? I'm like, ooh, your scriptwriter's bunch hate
He seems
you.
like the only acceptable choice for replacing James Gunn on Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, but I think he said he wasn't going to do it, right? He said he definitely wasn't going to do it.
Doesn't seem like he's going to do it, so I don't know what they're going to do over there.
I don't either. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole either. Anyways, if you can't support the podcast financially, it's always nice if you support us in some other way. One of the ways you can do that is just talking to other people, letting us know that you've done so. So we want to thank Heath. He told his calibrator about AVRant, so maybe we'll get a new listener from that. I'm going to say, hey, calibrators, both of you that are listening to this podcast.
That's a fairly well-known guy on AVO's forum, so if he likes us, he'll spread the word. So
thank you, great.
Thank you to Heath for talking us up.
Yeah, I do appreciate that, and we also thank. Is it 2? Is that what we're going to go with?
2A.
2A. Mm-hmm. He's offered to help us track down our website bandwidth problem, and that'd be great. I haven't had a chance to answer him. My life has been very stressful the last couple of weeks. I had my first climbing wall event. Which was great. It was great. It was great in that it was a success for me. I don't know that the event itself was all that successful, but that wasn't my fault. It wasn't because of me. I mean, we did great, but it was a good dry run to set everything up. So I'm very excited about that. So that was fun. But it did mean that because I don't handle stress well. So I didn't sleep very well for 3 days before the thing, and then I was a mess afterwards, and it was just a little. So I'm glad it's over. But my next event's on October 1st, and I got October 6th coming up as well, so that's exciting for me.
Well, all right, good for you.
In the news, Apple TV OS 12 is now available. So if you have an Apple TV 4K, you can get Atmos from iTunes, Vudu, and Netflix. So
Yep, and apparently even if you do not have an Apple TV 4K, it still says what's new, and it still says Dolby Atmos, so you better read the smaller print below that, because it's only if you have the 4K version that you can get the Atmos. But there it is, good to know. And yeah, the Netflix even updated their own website, and I noticed they also added the 2018 Sony Bravia TVs that use the Android TV operating system. Only the 2018s from Sony, but it's nice to see a few more devices starting to support Atmos from Netflix as well.
Right, so if I get, with my Xbox One streaming, will I be able to get the Atmos?
Yes, from Netflix, yes.
I gotta upgrade my app Netflix.
Oh, yeah, you do have to have the highest tier of Netflix to get it.
I really need
that as well.
Yeah, I really hate my Xbox. I'm so angry about this sound situation. I just can't get past it.
Well, you paid the right price for it, since that was.
I did. I'm not.
Christmas gift.
I'm not complaining about it. My kids love it, and actually, it's been really. It's just the sound thing.
Yeah.
Like if they had just gotten that, at any point, any engineer had spent literally 5 minutes putting in the code that it requires for this not to be so stupid, my love for this box would be complete.
People are confirming the Apple TV 4K is automatically switching between Atmos and other sound formats. So it's not just outputting Atmos at all times. Once
That's
you
what
say,
we were afraid
yes,
of,
it
right?
supports Atmos. We were afraid of that if it was all software, but it's not doing that, so good on them.
All right, so there was something of a viral outcry this past week after some complaints to Apple on Twitter about purchased movies suddenly no longer being available in users' iTunes libraries. It turns out that the initial complaint was from that went viral was mostly due to the user having moved countries, which, yeah. that happens, and the iTunes library is being different. But what had people upset was that Apple's customer service response was to offer a couple of free rentals but no refunds. With the release of iOS 12, there's now some new wording in the user agreement that says replacement or refund. So it's possible all the hubbub resulted in a policy change, but we'll see. This is Apple. I don't know.
It is, yeah, and it wasn't. So this one person might have been sort of the spearhead that went viral, but many other people reported other issues. Many of them who did not move countries, and this is just a reminder that when you're buying from a digital download service, they are not guaranteeing that you have that thing forever and ever. If the company goes under, if one of the studios says, nope, we're just not supplying that anymore, Apple's response was that you can download movies off to iTunes, and once they're downloaded, you've got them as long as your local storage doesn't lose them somehow, but there's no way to download 4K Ultra HD versions of movies off of iTunes as of right now. So, yeah.
That kind of reminds me of the Switch, the Nintendo Switch, about how they're now there was no way to back up your save files on the Nintendo Switch. Now, I know this is not really AV related, but it's me related. It's my podcast. So, my brother is autistic, and my parents are interested in getting him a Switch because he plays video games a lot. That's what he does. But I just found out about this whole does not back up in any way. And just recently, his PS3 died. So I had to switch all his stuff from one PS3 to another PS3, which was a hassle. I mean, it was not easy. But once you signed in online, and I had I just used a flash drive to switch the save game data from one to the other. And then once you connected it online, it would, the trophies and stuff, all that stuff came back and everything worked fine. Well, that's not going to be okay. I mean, you don't understand, like from a perspective of somebody who's got autism, who cannot handle change. If he loses all of his data, it's literally the end of his world.
Well, the Nintendo Online service, which you do have to pay for, it's not as expensive as Xbox Live or PlayStation Plus, but it is available. That is supposed to allow you to do that, but apparently it's not all games.
Not all games, and if you miss a payment or if you let it lapse, they delete you right away.
That's right.
Like everything's gone.
Yeah.
So if you let it lapse and then your Switch gets stolen and you buy a new Switch and they're like, nope, sorry, we don't have it. Stinks. Anyways, all right. IMAX is in talks with streaming services to release their self-financed movies in IMAX theaters. IMAX is in talks with streaming services to release their self-financed movies in IMAX. You mean all the swimming with the fish stuff and the driving real fast movies? No, like, how Amazon has financed their own movies, like full-on movies that have even like won awards and that, but IMAX has done this? Which movies are IMAX movies? No, IMAX is in talks with that because IMAX wants more content. That's what they want. And the streaming services are like, some of the movies that we produce aren't eligible for awards and that because they don't get a theatrical run, and a lot of awards. Oh, you're not saying IMAX is going to start streaming movies. You're saying that not streaming. Streaming movies are going to go on IMAX. That's right. Oh, that sounds awful. So like movies that were made by Netflix or Amazon or whomever, they could be shown in full-on IMAX theaters. That's I would never pay for that. I would never pay for that. Well, I tried to watch the Bleach movie the other day. That is just awful. I mean, it follows the anime really closely. I like the first season of Bleach, and I was pretty into it for a while, and then it does what all animes do and just gets way too up its own, you know what, and just like, will somebody just throw a sword at somebody or something? This is so boring. But that movie, and the same thing, there was the Full Metal Alchemist one, which was also fairly horrible. So what are the good Netflix movies or the?
Well,
Amazon
I mean, there was
movies?
like Amazon The Big Sick. That's their best one. Well,
okay.
Best, most well known. That won awards. So
that did win awards. That's true.
Could be something like that.
Nah.
The 2-part premiere of Inhumans in IMAX definitely wasn't worth it.
No, that's so much. That was not that good. I mean, I saw it on Netflix and I was like, so you guys just didn't want to animate the hair anymore, right? That you couldn't pay for the CGI, so you just shaved her bald. That's your solution to that problem.
Took away her one power.
One power, which was already
our version of Wolverine doesn't have claws and he doesn't heal. So yeah, that's.
He's just a dude. The funny haircut.
Didn't want to animate any of that. So.
All right. Let's get some comments here. Brent asked for a wireless solution since his contractor forgot to install the wire for one of his surround speakers. The contractor paid the $100 Anthony model, paid for the $100 Anthony model 1700, and it's working great. I'm really surprised he can just mudge you up a little wire on the wall. I'm surprised they do that. But hey, $100 is a lot easier than having to send somebody over there to do that work.
And I'm glad to hear that it's working. So
that's good.
Congrats, Brent.
So Chad has a room with the soffits running on both sides and the partial wall at the back where he was thinking about installing his surround speakers. We commented on how it looks as though his floor is not yet finished while the room is under construction, so why not run speaker wire to where he could mount speakers on stands, surround speakers at least. But what we saw in the photos is actually temporary boards over his finished floors to protect them while he's remodeling. I kind of thought that. I actually thought that those were that was like those really thin particle board they put over carpet sometimes.
Yeah.
But I was hoping. So he's going to give the soffit positions directly to either side of his seat to try, and he's happy with that since they could always be repurposed as top middles if he just moves his surround speakers in the future. So that's fine. It's perfectly valid. That's good. And we talked about that, right? Having like 3.
Yeah. You could have 6 overheads.
Yeah. Christopher started using just stereo output. I have to do this from his Xbox One and letting the Denon upmix everything after we had mentioned the idea. He's very pleased with the results. And Chris mentioned on Twitter that there is an option to have the Xbox One output a signal specifically for headphones when you set the main audio output mode to stereo. Then under that headphone output setting, you can have it apply a Windows Sonic or Atmos for headphones. Now that's the Atmos for headphones I know costs something.
Yeah, you have to buy the Dolby app.
Yeah, get that. Yeah, you can download the app and test it out for free.
Something like that.
Because I've got it.
The Atmos for headphones definitely requires a fee.
But the headphones requires a fee, yeah.
But Windows Sonic does not. That's just there.
Okay. And since it's just a stereo signal being sent out, but with extra ambiance information now added by the processing, using a receiver upmixing that can result in lots of overhead and surround effects. So it's not quite metadata. Really, it's more of a. It's
almost like stereo versus Pro Logic.
Yeah. It's almost like it plays with the phase because it's really just 2 drivers in your headphones anyways, right? So it's playing with the phase, and that gives the receiver even more cues as to where to put things. So that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, it seems to function.
I will try it out. I swear I will.
Yeah. We missed Justin L's as well.
What?
Just above Christopher's there.
Oh. Justin has the Bucart speakers that we've never heard of, and he was looking for a wireless solution for his surrounds and wondering whether he should buy self-powered speakers for use with a wireless transmitter. He thinks the Anthony Model 1800 that we suggested instead is perfect. He already has a pair of bookshelf speakers on hands.
Bouchard, I believe.
Bouchard, whatever. And that it should be a good timbre match and won't cost him extra. Also, his B&W Center is just a result of him constantly trying out new speakers. He figures a few AVRant listeners can relate. Yeah.
So there you go.
Rob
Speakers
can.
on hand. That's
better.
the solution.
So Jeff liked our TCL TV and Yamaha soundbar recommendations. Best Buy sells the TCL R615. Amazon sells this R617. Is there any actual difference? Probably. I don't know, but my guess is that a lot of times these manufacturers like Vizio is famous for this. They have a bajillion model numbers, and it just helps them track who sold it, I think, who they shipped it to.
In this case, there's one actual difference. No difference on the TV itself. The remote is different. The R615 that Best Buy sells is an infrared remote, and the R617 that Amazon sells, and everywhere else besides Best Buy, is an RF remote that you don't actually have to have line of sight to the screen. That's the only difference, and that's why the R617 costs a wee bit more. It's the remote. Nothing else.
But would you be able to use the R17 with the Harmony? Because
it's still got an IR receiver.
It's still got an IR receiver. Okay, good. Okay. All right. I feel like I have to blow my nose, but we're just going to have to power through this. It's only going to take us another hour and a half to get done with this.
That's right.
Travis just got a new Samsung 4K TV, the MU6000 series. He's viewed 1080p MKV files, Netflix and Hulu, and is seeing a fair amount of macro blocking, mostly in the dark scenes. No amount of tinkering with the TV settings seemed to resolve this, and he never saw this in his older Panasonic 1080p TV. Is this just a byproduct of upscaling everything to 4K if his source material didn't change, and his old TV didn't have all the macro blocking? Why does the new TV show it, and is there anything he can do about it? Dude, this is definitely a settings issue, right? I mean, this has got to be it sounds to me like the brightness is up too high, or there's something to do with the
I mean, the macro blocking is kind of just inherent to these signals, because
some of them.
1080p MKVs, I don't know if those have been data compressed at all. If it was done in Handbrake, they certainly have been.
Or could be, yeah. Handbrake doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be, but that's almost always why.
It defaults to that.
It's almost always why people are using Handbrake, is to make the file size smaller so that you're data compressing it. That's going to get macro blocking. Netflix and Hulu both definitely just have some macro blocking, and it does most frequently get noticed in the shadows. I was rewatching a couple episodes of Stranger Things, and there was a couple of scenes in there, and I was looking at the data rate, and I was getting 18 megabits per second down, which is pretty good data rate. And there's a couple of scenes in there I was just like, blah! Why that particular thing has all the macro blocking? And it didn't matter how many times I went over that scene. It was just there in the source. So I'm gonna say a good portion of this is just in the source. Now, why did you not see it on the last TV? Well, the model number that he gave was for an IPS panel from Panasonic, which means it has, sorry to say, but it had really bad black levels, and I'm wondering if it just obfuscated.
Crushed it all.
You just literally didn't see it because it just can't produce a deep black, that old Panasonic TV that you had. And your new Samsung, well, it's not like the black level champ. It's pretty darn good as far as LCD panels go. And maybe you're just seeing what was always there, but your Panasonic was just obfuscating it with its
put
really
in the Blu-ray,
black levels.
Right? Put in the 1080p Blu-ray. If you're seeing it in the 1080p
Physical
Blu-ray,
disc.
then you've got...
Right.
Then there's something we can talk about here.
Yes.
But you're right. The MKV is the only one that threw me off. But the other two...
Which easily could still...
Yeah. The streaming services are always going to have that sort of thing.
Yep.
I like the Paramount thing when it goes, woo!
Oh, yeah.
Wow, look at all the stair stepping and the macro blocking.
Yeah.
That looks really terrible. Thank you for making my home theater feel bad. So
yeah, given the sources that you've described, Travis, it could easily just be inherent to the sources. So yes, look at a very clean source, a physical disc, and if you're still seeing it there, then we'll dig into some stuff. But otherwise, I'm blaming this on the sources themselves.
Okay. Jon Z on Twitter. John has some standard Ruxel insulation meant to go in 2x4 construction, so it's a little over 3 inches thick. He'd like to make some DIY absorption panels with it, so he'd like to know whether to build his frames with an air gap included. What do we recommend? Well, so for those of you that don't understand this, what he's talking about here, in a panel, you can, in an absorption panel, you need some sort of absorptive material. We often suggest insulation, a rock wool or fiberglass or whatever. And the type that we suggest usually is the boards, because the thicker stuff that is firmer because it's easier to work with. Now, if you have 2 inches of insulation with a 2-inch air gap, which means 2 inches between the back of the insulation and the front and the wall itself, it has the same absorptive properties as 4 inches of insulation directly on the wall. So you can save money by buying 2-inch panels and putting a 2-inch air gap behind it, or a 1-inch panel with a 1-inch air gap instead of buying 2-inch. Performance-wise, it's the same. So he's asking, should he put an air gap in or not? And the answer is, if you can, yes. If you can't, then don't. It doesn't
Yeah,
really matter.
and the difference with going with thicker and thicker insulation is that it absorbs to lower and lower frequencies. The thicker you go, the lower in frequency you can absorb. So, I mean, some people are specifically looking for a targeted frequency range that they're trying to absorb. So that could play into this, because if you're like, I really only want to absorb from 500 hertz and up, then what you ought to do is take some 2-inch thick insulation and put it directly on the wall, because that's what it'll do. It'll absorb basically nothing below 500 hertz, but it'll absorb fairly nicely above 500 hertz. Now, if you put an air gap behind that 2-inch thick insulation, or you go to 3.5 or 4-inch thick insulation, now it's absorbing down to about 250 hertz or so. And then if you went to like 6-inch thick insulation or 4-inch insulation with a 2-inch air gap behind it, now you're getting down to, you know, a nice 120 hertz or so. Like, you basically cut the frequencies in half or so every time you increase the thickness by a couple of inches or so. So if you've got 3.5-inch thick insulation that would go in between normal 2x4s, and you put an air gap behind it, you're going to be absorbing really nicely down to about 125 hertz or so, and it'll be absorbing some amount all the way down to about 80 hertz, but it'll be like very absorptive down to about 125 and then roll off a bit below that.
So the reason that most people don't put air gaps, or might not put air gaps, is they just physically don't want this big, massive thing sticking off their wall. I don't have air gaps behind mine. Mine are sitting right smack on the wall, and they're 2 inches thick. I got a bunch of them that are just kind of floating around this room, and they're great, but, you know, I'm not worried nearly as much about that real low absorption, because I've got corner trapping.
And you've also got dual subs, which takes care of the below 120 hertz stuff. Yeah.
So before, I had 4-inch thick stuff that was actually 2.5 inches off the wall. That was just sort of sitting up there, just being in the way all the time. You know, I was just constantly bumping into the things. So that's why I went with the other stuff. So if you can do it, do it. If you can't, then, you know, don't feel bad. Jeb's neighbor is looking for a 75-inch TV in the $2,000 price range. What do we recommend? We normally recommend TCL, but I don't think they make a 75-inch.
They do not. No. Well, not with the ones that have the nice full array local dimming and all that. Those top out at 65 inches for the good ones.
So Vizio would be the next.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So which one?
The current Vizio P series, which would be the P75-F1, it's selling like directly for $2,100, so I would consider that to be in the $2,000 range. You could wait for a sale, because there'll be one at some point. It'll get it below $2,000. Now, at this moment, Vizio's out of stock, and everywhere that was selling them seems to be out of stock, but places like B&H are saying more stock is on the way, should be here, you know, sort of early October. So it's a little bit of wait, but as far as value goes for that price and that size, you can't beat it. So there it is.
Okay. Aidan's room is roughly 12.5 by 16 by 9. And he's about to buy some Ascend Sierra 2 speakers for his front LCRs, his left, center, and right speakers. He'd like to get surround speakers too, but not spend quite so much for the surrounds. He was thinking he'd just order the Ascend HTM-200SEs, but will they be a good match, or is there a surround speaker model that we recommend more highly? Those are a fine match.
This is a very fine match.
Those are a great match.
Now, I mean, if you want a perfect timbre match, you would look at the Sierra Lunas, but those are expensive.
They're pretty pricey.
They're a couple $300 less than a pair of Sierra 2s, but that's still like, what, I think they're $1,200. I'll have to look up the price, but
each?
Not, a pair? No, for a pair. But that's still expensive for surround speakers that you're going to be mounting on the wall, unquestionably. So the HTM-200SEs are a great choice. Are they a perfect timbre match? No, but they're close. And for surrounds, they'd be absolutely fine. Now, if the form factor of those, because they're not small, the HTM-200SEs, they're compact, but I wouldn't call them a small speaker. And if you want something that's maybe even a bit easier to mount, then the Focal Little Birds are a pretty decent match for any of the Ascend speakers. And those come with the integrated wall mount, so very easy to mount the Focal Little Birds. You could consider the Birds, but those are also bigger than you might imagine. So, there you go. HTM-200SEs if the form factor works. If not, consider the Focal Little Birds, I would say.
There you go. Brian is finishing his basement, and this will be his first dedicated home theater, so he doesn't want to make any big mistakes. We'll help you make a lot of little ones, dude. The room will be fully enclosed, a little over 14 feet wide, 22 feet long, and 7 feet 9 inches high, about 2,400 cubic feet. So he's got his pictures here, but it's just a bunch of
It's
wood.
just framing. Yep.
It's just
So
framing.
first image, if you're seeing it on YouTube, this is actually from outside of the room, looking at what will be the back wall and into the room. So this is as though you're going to enter this room. Is the
so
first
for the rest of you
point.
guys, in the back of the room towards the left, a little bit left of center, is the door in, and the front right wall has a window in it. Okay, on the front, the right wall near the front of the room has a window in it.
Right. And this is definitely a rectangle, so that's good. That's predictable and good to see, and that's nice construction and some perfectly decent dimensions there.
Yeah. So, his wife loves their 55-inch OLED TV, and they don't want a fully blacked out room, so they decided to get a 77-inch OLED for the theater. He's planning to sit 10 feet from the back wall, 12 feet from the front wall. The TV will be on a stand mount, so they'll be 10 feet from the screen. Upstairs, they sit 12 feet from their 55-inch OLED, so even though it isn't a huge projector screen, he figures it will still be a nice size upgrade for them.
Yeah, and you'll be getting about a 32-degree field of view, which is right in exactly where SMPTE would want you to sit. So you're not out of the range of recommended.
Yeah, I'd like to sit a little bit closer.
I wouldn't mind, but like you said, if you're used to 12 feet from a 55, then yes, 10 feet from a 77 will certainly fill your field of view to a greater extent.
So we'd like to get an SVS 2000 series sub, one in the front left corner, one in the right rear corner. Will the sealed SB2000s be sufficient, or the much larger PB2000s necessary? Now, he built the box.
He did, yes.
He actually built the box,
the cardboard model of a PB2000. So he's like, this is the big one, and I'm guessing somebody got a look at that and went, that's pretty big.
That's too big. Yeah. I think the SB2000s would be okay in this room.
Yeah, 2,400 cubic feet. You are squarely in the medium-sized room for which the SB2000 is completely appropriate. So if the smaller form factor of SB2000s, your room size is it's a dedicated sealed room, I'd be perfectly happy with those.
So the doorway is on the back wall over to the left side, as I mentioned, and that position is set. He's wondering where he should mount his surround back speakers. Dolby says to have the surround back speakers between 135 and 150 degrees, but with 10 feet behind his seats, that actually puts them quite far wide apart. Meanwhile, the Atmos diagram basically showed the surround backs being the same distance apart as the front left and right speakers, but that won't be possible because of the location of the door. So you can either have the surround back speakers basically in the rear corners, which actually lines up fine with the Dolby's 135 to 150 degree angles, or he could have the surround backs closer together so they're inside the door. What do we think is best? I think that you should put them inside, like as close to that door as possible, and then have the other one match.
Yeah, so you'd have them closer together on the back wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, that's what I would do as well. I mean, so look, the Dolby guidelines are guidelines.
Well, not only that, I mean, you could actually look at like THX, and THX wants you to put them like right next to each other in the very back of the room. So you're someplace between what THX wants and what Dolby wants. So
yeah, and also
DTS?
In your AV receiver, they usually give you the option of specifying how far apart, or they give you a range. They're like, are your speakers only 1 to 3 feet apart? Are they 3 to 6 feet apart? Or are they greater than 6 feet apart?
Right.
Or some range similar to that. So yeah, you'll be able to make this work no problem. And yeah, the surround back speakers, I want them behind me, properly behind me.
Yes.
So yeah, I would have it on the inside of your door and symmetrical.
All right. The Dolby Atmos diagrams also show the ceiling speakers being the same distance apart as the front left and right speakers, but his fronts will be 9 feet apart, and that would put the Atmos speakers only about 2 feet from each side wall. Should he stick with that, or have the ceiling speakers a bit closer together to each other, farther away from the side walls? How close together is too close? I would keep them in the same line as the main speakers, the front left and right speakers, especially since depending on where your couch is too, that's going to make a difference, because if you cheat them in, I feel like somebody's going to have a speaker directly over their head that isn't actually supposed to be there.
Yeah, whoever's sitting on like farthest to the left or right on the couch is going to have a speaker more or less directly above them. Yeah, it's one of these things where, you know, and it's similar with surround speakers as well, right? The surround speakers, overhead speakers, they're all primarily meant to create envelopment and ambience. They're not really supposed to super duper draw your attention, because that would distract you from looking forward at the screen. Of course, some people want that. That's what they're hoping to have, is this really pinpoint, obvious distraction, because that's what makes them go, oh, that's why I put the speaker there. It's super clear where it is.
You should get Oro 3D with the voice of God speaking directly over your head.
So, I mean, I wouldn't say either of these is like strictly right or wrong. Having the speakers with 2 feet from the speaker to the side wall, that's not a problem. So it's not like that is too wide apart to make it work.
Yeah.
But similarly, if you're like, I just want them physically closer to me, and therefore I'm going to have them 3 feet away from each side wall.
You know what does that exact same thing? Volume. just turn the volume up a little bit, makes them seem a little bit closer to you. That's the only, basically that's what your receiver's going to do. Is like, oh, they're very loud, I'll turn them down some.
Right.
And that's because they're too close.
Really, there's no really bad choice here. If you had them 3 feet away from each side wall and therefore a little bit closer to each other than your front left and right, this is not the end of the world. That's still going to work. And if you kept them exactly as far apart as your front left and right, and now they're 2 feet away from the side walls, also not a problem. Right. So I'm not going to tell you to strictly do one or the other, because neither of these is a bad choice.
I am. I think you should keep them along with your speaker.
Oh, well, there you go. So you got one vote there and one vote that's essentially a null. So there's your decision.
Earl, when you run Audyssey, the size of the speaker is large or small is automatically set, and any speakers set to small are automatically given a crossover frequency. When Audyssey's EQ is applied, does it only EQ down to that crossover frequency? If you were to manually lower the crossover, would you end up with no EQ being applied to those lower frequencies? Now, I would love to read this other stuff that's here, but Rob looked it all up, and I feel like I'm taking credit for his research, because my answer was like, I have never once thought to myself, I'm going to lower that crossover. Like, I would never lower the crossover. I would raise the crossover,
right?
But I would never lower it.
Because in our experience, usually if it sets a crossover that we aren't going to use, it set one lower than what we want to use. It'll set it to 60 hertz or 40 hertz or something, and then we will manually raise it to 80.
Right. If it's not 80, if it's lower than 80, I'll make it 80. If it's above 80, I leave it there.
Leave it alone. Right.
Because that. So I guess this is like sort of a question that I was like, I don't think this has ever crossed my mind in any way, shape, or form. So, what's the answer, Rob? I'll let you answer since you
So this was directly from Audyssey Labs, and in fact, I believe written directly by Chris Karyakakis.
Oh, there you go. A good friend.
He did post these on the blog or in the Ask Audyssey section. So, first one, and this is a quote: "The placement of speakers in the room greatly affects their low frequency performance. That's why it's so important to measure and not go by the theoretical specifications. It's not recommended to lower the crossover from what was measured. There will be no Audyssey correction applied to frequencies below the roll-off point that was found." So that's the direct answer to the question. No, it's not EQing below that. Continuing the quote, "Content below the crossover will be sent to the subwoofer, where it will be corrected by the high-resolution multi-EQ filters in that channel, in the subwoofer channel." So that's their recommendation and the answer directly to the question. But furthermore, because it's kind of germane to this, quote again, "Audyssey doesn't set crossovers in any product. It finds the low-frequency roll-off point of your speakers and reports that to the AVR, your AV receiver. Every manufacturer uses that information differently. In most AVRs, speakers found to roll off below 40 hertz are set to full range, that is, with no crossover to the subwoofer. That means that bass will not be redirected to the sub. Audyssey recommends that if you have a sub, you should set crossovers for all your speakers. I would suggest starting with 80 hertz. So none of that contradicts anything we've been saying, but it does answer the question directly. You will not get EQ if you lower the crossover from what was automatically set. It'll EQ down to the crossover that was automatically set, but then not below that.
Yeah. I just don't believe the manufacturers when you have a microphone in the room. You know what I mean? I guess that's what it comes down to. Like some manufacturers, like, my speaker plays full range. And by full range, I mean something other than 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. I mean what I mean for full range.
I think it sounds full, therefore I call it full range.
That's right. So don't believe the manufacturers, I guess, would be is what Chris Karyakakis is saying there. All right, Richard. Richard helped his friend plan his basement theater area and pre-wiring. It's not a fully dedicated room, but at least there's a door at the top of the stairs and the doors to close off the rest of the entryways. Facing the stairs into the basement, there's an open section to the left that is approximately 11 feet long, 13 feet wide. And to the right is the theater area, which is 16.5 feet long and 14 feet wide. The ceiling is, I don't understand how it could be two different widths, but whatever. The ceiling is about 7.5 feet high throughout, and although the front of the theater area where the screen has been mounted has a fairly large soffit that's at doorway height, so roughly 2,800 cubic feet in total. Hardwood flooring and drywall construction. They've already mounted the 100-inch silver ticket screen with 21 inches at the bottom of the frame, from the bottom of the frame to the floor, and the BenQ HT2050 projector on the ceiling. All right, HDMI cables, electrical outlets, speaker wires, Ethernet, and coax cables will all run inside the walls, and all the hookups are below the screen. Richard's friend wants a 5.1 setup to start, but two ceiling speakers wires were run to locations about 8.5 feet from the front wall in case he wants to add top middles in the future. And despite Richard's advice, his friend did not want surround speakers on stands directly to either side of his couch, so the surround speaker wires were run to the back wall, and unfortunately, they are positioned close to the ceiling. Okay. So he's got surround backs. All right. Okay. Here's the. There's a picture here. All right.
Yes.
I didn't see this picture before.
Oh, okay.
All right. So this is real nice. It looks real nice.
It does.
Yep. It is a Lego
kind of
shape.
an L shape.
It's kind of an L-shaped
like a very
Lego room.
fat L.
The stairs. When you walk down the stairs, the screen is on the wall. If you turn to your left and then. If you walked in the room, turn around and face the stairs that you just came down, the screen would be to the right of the stair, the entry to the stairs there. And then so he's sitting sort of with the opening of the L to the back, the short part of the L to the back, and then to the right is the longer part of the L. That makes sense. I guess there's a door, some other bunch of doors and stuff. Anyways, it's a hardwood floor. He's got a foosball table in here. That's it's nice looking. It's all very nice. And there's a bed.
Yes. Someone is sleeping down here. Well, I'm assuming other parts of the house are probably being renovated.
All right. Richard and his friend both live in Canada, so any recommendations need to take that into account. So, Rob, you're on.
Yes.
So, what receiver would we recommend? He wants no more than 5.1.2 is what he's wired for. So, he doesn't need a 44 or 43 or 42, whatever it is.
He does not.
He does not need that. So, he can go with the 3300 if you can find it. Can you find that 3300?
A bit tough, but the 3400H is fairly easy to find still, and you can get B-stock refurbished directly from Denon, and the place to go for that in Canada is Gibby's electronic supermarket. Now, the price for the B-stock one is $580 Canadian. That's not too bad. That's pretty darn good.
$300 American, I think.
Well, I mean, if you went straight exchange rate, it's better than the price people are getting on the refurbished models in the States. So, I would point you straight to that. Now, if you want a brand new one, Gibby's also does sell brand new Denon X3400Hs. So that is something that you do. I didn't look up the price on that, so I'll try and find that as we're talking here. $700 for a brand new one. Canadian.
That's still not that bad.
Still not too bad. But I mean, that's the one I'd point you to because that's got multi-Q XT32.
Right.
It does top out at 5.2.2 or 7.2. 7 speakers maximum. That's where that model tops out. But that fits the bill for a price that's very reasonable with the best level of Audyssey correction. So
his friend isn't interested in bringing in an auditioning speaker. He just wants an immediate 5.1 speaker combo with a good price to performance value. Richard thinks he'll be able to convince him to add a second sub. But what do we recommend in a 5.1 speaker package to start with? Well, you're in Canada, so there's a bunch of Canadian companies that are up there. But I'm going to start with this room because you need a carpet, dude. A lot of these Canadian, and room treatments in general, a lot of these Canadian speakers tend to be a little bit on the bright side, and they're just very accurate.
Objectively, they're just flat, but they have basically no high frequency roll off, which a lot of other speakers do. Yeah. So comparatively, they sometimes sound a bit bright, but they're objectively just very, very flat up to 20 kilohertz.
Right. So I think one of the things that if we recommend speakers that are a lot of these Canadian brands that use the NRC Labs and all that, they
National Research Council of Canada.
They tend to sound very forward. So I think you're going to need to talk to him about putting a little bit of room treatments in here and a nice big fat plush rug between him and his TV. Yeah,
I mean, you can definitely install a rug. That should be doable. And I was actually going to get to this at the end with the sort of like anything else ideas because he didn't include anything in his email about room treatments, but
This room's gotta be so-
is pretty hard and flat. I would want some extra absorption in this room for
The echoes in this room must be absolutely brutal. I mean, it just that.
I mean, even just
like,
talking in there, I bet you can hear yourselves echo a bit. And I mean, of course, people will say, well, of course, it's unfurnished right now. But even with some furnishings, it's not going to completely take care of it in this room. Not with that hardwood floor and then plenty of hard, flat surfaces here. So you got to take some consideration. And I mean, let's assume he wanted to put up some movie posters or decoration or something. Every single one of those should be a printed acoustic panel.
Do not hang anything on the wall that doesn't absorb sound. That's what I would
much.
say. You know, because the foosball table alone, that just gives me a headache looking at that thing because of all the hard surfaces in there. I can only imagine what that's going to sound like. So it's going to help every part of this, and really just get a bunch of acoustic panels printed that look nice and hang them on the wall and everywhere you can. Okay, but other than that, he went speakers. So I don't know. Okay, Paradigm, of course.
Yes.
Who's the other big ones that are up there? That are is it not
Monitor
PSB?
Audio?
PSB is the one. I always get PSB and Monitor Audio confused for some reason.
Yeah, Monitor is UK.
UK, I know. Yeah, I don't understand why.
But I mean, again, Gibby's, they are a Paradigm dealer, and they still have stock of the. So it's now discontinued. There was the Paradigm Monitor 7 series, and now they've got a brand new series, Monitor SE, I think they're just called. But they still have stock of the Monitor 7s, and they're going at nice sale prices.
Okay,
and those are nice speakers, the Monitor 7s. And actually, one thing I like about them is they're quite efficient. They're not as efficient as, say, Klipsch, but they're more efficient than a lot of other speakers. And this room isn't tiny, nor is it huge, but you're driving everything with a receiver. Having speakers that are a little bit more on the efficient side, not a bad thing by any means. And they have a really nicely designed center speaker with the tweeter above the mid-range driver and all that stuff. So I would definitely look at Gibby's selection of Paradigm Monitor 7 speakers. Now, given that he doesn't have a ton of space below his screen and he wants to put it on a stand, you might look at the Monitor Center 1 that uses this little bit smaller 5 1/4 inch woofers instead of the larger 6 1/2 inch woofers. So that keeps the height of the speaker in total to a little over 7 inches, which should work nicely below your screen. Now, one thing here is I don't think you got room for towers, because there's a door directly to the left of the screen. Right? You could, I guess, shimmy a tower in there, but then anytime you open the door, man, am I scared of that bumping into the tower speaker.
Right. So what do you think about wall mounting?
Well, no, I was thinking he wants to have some kind of entertainment cabinet thing to hold the equipment below the screen. So why not just put a bookshelf speaker on there? That way, if the door does swing open, it swings open into the entertainment cabinet, and your speaker can be a little in from the edge, right?
Sure.
I was thinking something like that. So as far as bookshelf speakers go, the Paradigm Mini Monitor from the Monitor 7 series would be a great choice as your front, left, right speakers. And then, for your surrounds, if you want to wall mount them, they've got the wall mountable, like the Surround 1 would be a great choice there. And you're all in for all 5 of those speakers at about $1,200 now, which is a very good price to performance. That's Canadian dollars again. That's a very good price to performance ratio. So that's where I'd send you. You could look at SVS, the Prime series, certainly. Since the surround speakers might be mounted up high, maybe you want Prime elevations. But the Prime series in Canada isn't the great value that it is in the States. You don't get the free two-way shipping because you're buying from one of the Canadian resellers. And it's $600 a pair for the Prime elevations, right? All by themselves. So I'm thinking the Paradigms from Gibby's is a better deal.
Right. So he says, what distance would we recommend for the seating position from the 100-inch screen? Well, I recommend, hold on a second, let me scroll up. I recommend you sit 8.5 feet from the front wall.
Because that's where your top middles are wired for?
It's because that's where you wire the top middles. So you kind of lock them in place at that point. I mean, the last thing you want to do is have this guy go, you know what, I will install Atmos speakers. By the way, if you push this guy for Atmos, and he installs Atmos speakers, be ready for him to be not happy with you.
Underwhelmed.
Yes. So do not push this. He needs to want it. Because if you're like, oh, it's going to be amazing, you're going to hear stuff overhead, and he gets and he's going to be like, what?
But having run the wires when the ceiling was open, very good idea, because that cost you pennies. So,
that's right. That's fine, but at the same time, don't push this. But yeah, you kind of locked him in place. So the last thing you want to do is have his couch further up and then have to move it back, and all of a sudden his screen gets smaller because of Atmos, then he'll really hate you.
Now,
So
having the top middles a little bit in front of you or a little bit behind you, neither of those is the end of the world. There is a range that's given for where top middles can go, and you'd be easily within the range. Now, I'll just mention, if you were 8 feet 9 inches from eyes to screen, so like 3 inches farther back, and I was only estimating where the top middles are because I could only see the locations given in the diagram, so in real life they might be a little closer or farther. But yeah, 8 feet 9 inches from eyes to screen would give you a 45-degree field of view with a 100-inch screen. So I'm thinking if you're 9 feet from the screen and those top middles have been wired for about 8.5 feet into the room from the front wall.
8 feet 5 3/6 inches. That's how
looks
long.
like that. So
That's
it looks
what
like
it
it's
says.
8.5. Yes. But yes, right in that range, 8 to 9, feet seems perfect to me. It's great for that screen size, and it seems like it would position you right under your top middles that you already wired for.
Right. So the center speaker and all of the electronics need to go below the screen. Again, 21 inches from the floor to the bottom of the screen. What AV equipment stand would we recommend that will hold all of the gear and hide the wires on the front wall? Well, I usually recommend Sanus, but 21.5 inches is pretty small.
Yep. So
it would be easier, I think, just to go to your local whatever furniture stores that, or hell, I'd probably go to Target as well.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Just literally walk around with a tape measure and say, I want something this wide, which is going to be probably about 100 inches wide. Oh, no, wait. What's the width on the 100-inch screen?
What is that, 80-something inches?
Yeah, so you're going to want something about that wide, maybe a little bit wider if you're going to end up putting the bookshelves on it, so that it's at least as wide as the screen is. So you want something about as wide as the screen, maybe a little bit wider than that, and then you're going to check the depth, of course, but the height is going to be the thing that's going to kill you. So, and anything can hide those wires. I mean, that you put up there, as long as you put a bunch of stuff in the shelves. It could just be a normal little shelving unit from like whatever, furniture flat pack place that you guys have up there in Canada.
Well, I'm going to suggest you just go to IKEA.
I kind of hate IKEA, so go on.
Oh, well, I'm going to, because I got a couple of stands from IKEA because I had a not super dissimilar situation, which is I wanted some stands that could fit below where I wanted to mount my acoustic panels. I wanted them to be able to fit underneath where the acoustic panels are mounted on the wall. So they've got a whole series at IKEA called Besta. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it in Swedish, but that's the way the letters look, is Besta. There's a whole selection there, and a lot of them are only 15 inches tall. And you may be like, well, I got 21 inches, but don't forget you can put stuff on the top, including your center speaker could go on the top. And that's just about right for that Paratime Monitor Center 1, which, like I say, is a hair over 7 inches tall. Now, if 7 inches on top of 15 inches, you're at 22, but you do have the frame of the screen. So it might be a little bit up into the frame of the screen, but it shouldn't actually rise onto the screen itself. So I'm thinking that'll just shimmy in there. That might just fit nicely with a 15-inch tall stand. Now, they have another one that is actually the one that I thought I got, although maybe the name changed or something. I thought it was in the Besta series, but it is now called MOSJO with the umlauts over the last O. I don't know how to pronounce that. Thank you, IKEA. But this one is not too wide. It actually fits two, like if you have standard equipment that's 17 inches wide, it fits 2 of those inside of it just perfectly.
Okay.
So you could maybe get 3 of those and put 3 of them across the front. Because that one comes with a nice little shelf that's, adjustable in terms of its height, and then it'll give you a nice platform, 3 of them across underneath your screen. It'd be just about perfect. So $50 for that MOSJO with the umlauts. I don't know how to pronounce it.
So it's $150 if he gets 3
$150 if you get 3 of them. You might only get 2 of them, whatever, but I like that one.
So as we mentioned, the surround speakers wires will run to the back wall and they're close to the ceiling. Assuming that some extra length to allow the actual speakers to be mounted a bit lower, what would be the optimal height? Well, what's the height of the couch? Because that's going to determine that. So you got to make sure you have line of sight from the tweeter, at the very least, to ears. As people are seated, so maybe having it high isn't that big of a deal. And if he really does want them high, I mean, it's fine.
Well,
this guy's gonna love it no matter what.
Yeah, you're gonna be stopping at 5.2.2 at the most, and very likely stopping at 5.1 for a good long while. Having your surround speakers elevated is not the end of the world at all. I mean, that's where they used to go.
That's right.
They used to be elevated all the time, so I think that's fine.
What are our options for having run only 2 in-ceiling wires? What are our opinions, I'm sorry, of having run only 2 in-ceiling wires? They're actually completely drywalled over, as his friend said he doesn't want any speakers in the ceiling for now. But the locations are marked, so he'll just have to drill holes in the future. Should they have run 4 in-ceiling wires? Dude, it's not your house.
That's right.
It's not your house. And no, I don't think so. I think that if his surround speakers are up high and behind him, there's no more speakers I would put in the back of that room.
No.
Or overhead at the back behind him. Those speakers behind him are only speakers that are going to be behind him. So unless you can convince him to take those speakers that are behind him and turn them into rear heights, and then run new wires for surrounds and put them on stands on either side of his couch.
Theoretically, since you kind of have side walls, I mean, the one on your left side is a bit farther back, but there are kind of side walls in here. So theoretically, at some point, you could have surround speakers on the pseudo side walls. The positions that are already wired on the back wall up high, you could call them rear heights. Right. You could move the seat back a little bit, or you could actually still just have top middles and rear heights. That's an acceptable configuration. Yeah, I mean, there are ways that you could expand potentially to 7.2.4 without actually doing anything other than adding side surrounds.
Right.
So
I would end up, if he left everything the way it is, I would just end up with front heights and top middles.
That could also be done. Yeah. But honestly, I think you're fine with what you did. I mean, who cares? It's too late now. You're not going to take down the drywall at this point, so you're fine.
He asked about anything else. Well, we already said lots and lots of absorption.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, that's the major thing. That's the biggest thing.
Dual subs are good, but in this shaped room, they're going to be harder to place.
Yeah, it'd be hard to predict where the heck to put them in here. Yep.
So just as much absorption as you can convince him to get.
And like we say, printed panels are a great way to put it in there without it.
Tri-traps at the back of this room,
yeah.
You know, and any of the corners that he'll allow you to put them in would be great, you know, from Gick, the tri-traps.
Sure.
Stuff like that. Infinite Gary. Infinite Gary says, Home Theater Review published an article detailing the recent financial troubles of the brand Krell and talking about Walter Schofield, whatever. That's a Bond villain. Anyways, who was credited with being, he's like, no, Mr. Bond, I expect you to listen to these very expensive amplifiers and tell me that they make the sound different. And if you don't, I will torture
you.
Chocolatey. Who's credited with being something of a maven at revitalizing flagging brands?
Yeah.
We call it flagging? Fledgling? No.
No, flagging. Flagging means you're falling behind.
No.
Yes. You look up the definition of the word flagging, folks.
All right, whatever. That there's a different word that's coming to my mind. It's just not coming to my mouth right now. He's run Mark Levinson, been the only person to run Meridian at a profit, boosted Wharfdale and ELAC, and most recently just left Motiva to take on Krell. That should tell you something right there that I can't I'm not gonna say it. Clearly for audiophiles, there's positive brand recognition with the name Krell, but also an expectation of very high prices. If Wharfdale, ELAC, and Emotiva are any indication, it seems as though one of Walter's tactics is to target lower price brackets. So do we think Krell is a brand that could use that tactic to revitalize itself? Hey man, Velodyne makes headphones. That's all I'm going to say right there. Velodyne makes headphones. How? Why? I don't know. I don't know who got in that boardroom and said anything can happen, Gary. Anything can happen. Now, Krell's made speakers before, and they've made other things as well. I mean, they don't just make their monster amplifiers. But do I think that they could revitalize themselves as a budget brand? No.
Oh, not budget.
But could they lower their prices and become more accessible?
Yeah, maybe not $8,000 for their entry-level monoblock.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at Kaleidoscape. Kaleidoscape did the exact same thing, right? They had, you know, their stuff was $10,000 a pop. You know, you couldn't touch anything that they owned for less than like $8,000. And all of a sudden, they come out with a $1,000 player in a service where you can get bit for bit Blu-rays, you know, streaming, which is like the only place you can get something like that. Yeah. So, I mean, it can be done for sure.
Yeah, I mean, for a brand like this, for a boutique brand, you do need to be something that custom installers are going to consider.
Yeah.
And it can't, I mean, there was a time when people demanded Krell, right? Like that's what you got to get. But those days have passed, and there's lots of competition. And I think, I mean, yeah, to revitalize a brand like that, they still have the good name recognition. It's still a brand that audiophiles are going to recognize, but you've got to get into a competitive. They don't hold the cachet anymore where they can be like, yeah, $10,000. That's what it's going to cost you to run stereo with Krell equipment. You know, just for the amplification. You can't really do that anymore. So I think I have to be a bit more.
This guy needs to walk in the room with, and by the room I mean the company, with a designer in hand, who will, rebrand their products, and the first thing that they come out with is more reasonable, however that goes for Krell, like integrated amp. You know what I mean? Just 2-channel integrated stereo amp.
That makes sense.
That would allow custom installers to sell it for whatever, but it would be cheap enough that it's double the price of anything else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's about where I think they can go. And then from there, they can then start deciding if they're going to, change up some of the higher end stuff, or if they're going to try to come up with something even lower priced.
We know from all the blind listening tests that people can't hear the difference between properly functioning amplifiers.
Yeah.
That you can't hear it, but people believe that they do. So if you're like, this is Krell, we're back, we're as good as it, we're better than ever, the quality is fantastic, and we've re-engineered things to hit an aggressive price point, but we haven't given up an inch on quality, and everyone's going to be like, everyone who's interested in the Krell name is going to be like, oh yeah, that's right, and they're going to listen to it, oh, it really is, it's just as good, but I can maybe afford this thing if I save for 2 years. Like, that's all you got to do, a little bit of marketing razzmatazz, and it'll work.
Who needs a car? I have a Krell.
Well, weirdly, they were in Hyundai, which is not the mix that I would expect. Krell and Hyundai, but they had apparently that didn't go so well. And
I was going to say, how long did it take for that dude to get fired? All right, Christopher Nolan and Paul Thomas Anderson made some waves online with a survey they sent to all members of the Directors Guild of America, which they intend to forward to all TV manufacturers to try to get an easily accessible reference picture mode on all displays that offer accurate colors and no motion smoothing. Petitions about this have been done before, and Gary knows that most TVs these days already have pretty accurate cinema or movie picture mode out of the box with the option to turn off motion smoothing. So what's the big deal? Well,
Christopher Nolan saw a recent Samsung that just came out of the box and was set up in vivid mode with everything turned on and the colors all inaccurate. Was like, this is no good. I think that's what happened.
I think so too. It's like, oh my god, he went to somebody's house and saw their TV and was like, I don't know, I just put it up there.
I just took it out of the box and put it up there.
And then it's like, and how this is an injustice. I'm like, hey, dude, hey. Chris, look over here. Yeah, we've been dealing with this for years, dude. We got this.
Well, look, right? ISF was founded on this very thing, right? Going back to Joel Silver, who just was awarded with a Lifetime Achievement Award this year from the CDO organization. It's like this was his whole thing. Right here.
Yeah, that's all this is. It's like some rich entitled dude was like, oh.
Well, I mean, I have to say, even with the LG OLEDs, right? The default picture mode out of the box is the automatic picture settings mode that like fluctuates the backlight based on how much ambient light there is in your room, and it's way too blue and things are like, yeah, you're right. Take it out of the box, but so I mean, Gary is also right? You go to cinema mode, or you go to ISF picture mode or THX picture mode, and you're basically done. I mean, yes, it can be further improved, absolutely, but for the vast majority of people, you don't have to do a heck of a lot more, and you're certainly way closer to the original picture than the vivid mode out of the box or the automatic picture mode out of the box. So both parties are right about this. Now, do I mind the idea of, say, on your remote, there was literally a button that just called reference picture mode. You hit that one button, and that's all you have to do. You don't even have to go into the settings. I'd be okay with that.
I want there to be a button that's... I don't want that. I want there the button that's store mode. And you know what I mean? Sure. Like, reference is what when you turn it on, it should be like that. And then you have to go into the settings and turn it into stupid mode. And they have to call it like that. They have to call it stupid mode.
Yeah.
So that nobody will choose it naturally.
Labeled,
don't call it vivid.
You don't want this mode.
Yeah. Best buy mode. You know, this will cause burn-in.
So I mean, I'm not against at all there being. I mean, like you say, there kind of already is a reference picture mode, but if it had a better name, if it were the default out of the box, yeah, I'm all for all of that. That's also fine. I don't know. Like you say, what is the big deal? Ease.
The big deal is that they just figured out that there's a problem and they're trying to fix something that know we've all been talking about for years.
I swear, like Christopher Nolan just bought a Samsung or an LG OLED and was like, "Wait a second!" directly out of the box.
Yeah, I'll set it up myself this time. I have the time. I won't pay my manservant to do it. All right, Gary has often seen speaker amplifier reviewers mentioning air in quotes. Like, there's a sense of air when these speakers play, or the system retains the air in the recording. So what is air in this context? It's the air between the reviewer's ears that they're talking about. Gary, I just gotta say something.
It is a very subjective term.
It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything.
I mean, I've certainly seen it in relation to high frequency extension. There are a lot of speakers with high frequency roll off.
Yeah. You could also talk about it as like how accurate it is in that there's air between the notes, like the notes don't hang over.
Yeah, but the proper name for that is delineation.
I know.
I can distinguish one note from the next.
These are not scientists.
You're right.
These are
I've certainly heard the phrase "air around the notes."
Yeah,
that is definitely a phrase I've seen written. And yeah, that would be properly called delineation, because that is a thing you can actually measure. Would be delineation, right?
Yeah, but that's not what they're doing. They're just like, I feel like there's air in this. Like, yeah, you got air.
But yeah, mostly in the context where I've read it, it is either referring to delineation as an air around the notes, or it's just referring to high frequency extension. That, like I say, a lot of speakers have high frequency roll off. The ones that don't, they'll say, oh, these have a greater sense of air to them because they can actually play up to 20 kilohertz instead of rolling off at 8.
Not that any of these reviewers can hear up to 20 kilohertz.
Definitely not.
Let's not let little things like that bother us.
But mostly high frequency information seems to be what it boils down to.
But in the reality, Gary, what it is they got to say something about the speakers.
Yeah.
They're gonna whatever random emotion they're feeling at that time.
Oh, I mean, we've seen lots of words that mean, right? These speakers sound thick. These speakers sound smooth. Right? You see that all the time. What does that mean?
A friend of mine has a daughter, and she's 16, I think. One of her daughter's friends came over, and when my friend, the mother, walked out, she goes, "Oh, you look thick today," and she almost slapped her. I'm like, thick is a word that they say? Apparently, thick is now a compliment. Like, bad is a compliment.
THICC version of thick?
I guess. Yeah. I don't know. Alan. Like, as in Alan Thick. All right. Adrian. You look like Alan Thick today. Is it Alan Thick? Did he do
R.I.P.
No, didn't he do that? What was that TV show that he did?
Growing Pains.
Not Growing Pains. Wasn't there the one where it was like it was clips or something like that? It wasn't.
Oh.
That's it's not America's Funniest Home Videos, but it was something like that. Like it was like People Are Amazing or something like that. I can't remember. Anyways, you look Alan Thick. Adriano just wants to hear our thoughts on the 24.10.10 Atmos demonstration that Krix Home Cinema will be running at the Melbourne International Hi-Fi Show in October. They'll be using a Trinov Altitude 32 processor with its 16-channel expansion module that turns into Altitude 48. They'll also have a $150,000 4K barcode projector and a 250-inch screen and a 32-inch quote home unquote theater
32 seat.
What did I say? 32 inch 32 seat running 25-minute long demos throughout the day. So what's our take? Well, first of all, I've reviewed Krix speakers before. They were terrible. Okay, they were so bad. It was okay. First of all, their couch is going to be super low to the ground because their speakers are really
That's quite
short.
A couch for 32 people.
The tweeters are so low. Like, I had to sit on the ground to make those speakers sound right in my home theater. They were terrible. But Maybe they make other speakers that are better, but the ones I reviewed, not so much. What do I think of this? Hey, anybody want to send me a ticket? Because I'll be happy to go. I would love to hear this. It sounds great.
I'm thinking surely someone somewhere had a Trinnov where they did the... Well, so when it was the Trinnov Altitude 32, you couldn't do the full... So 24.1.10 is actually the maximum channel count for a home version of an Atmos processor. You basically have a speaker every 15 degrees in the full 360 degrees around you, and then there are 10 overhead speakers that you can have, and then there's the dedicated LFE channel. So the 32 couldn't do that, right? You ran out of processor channels, but now they've got the extra expansion module to add 16 more channels if you want to, turning it into an Altitude 48. So I don't know, maybe...
Why would you need 10 subwoofer channels, though? That's what I don't understand.
Because they've got 48 things to work with, and they're only using 34 of them for speakers.
No, I'm saying, I mean, it should be all mono coming out.
I know
at that. So
that's really... one thought. If those are actually unique, separately done, yep. Yeah, there's that. Although I don't know, maybe they're doing a whole sound field management thing, and they're actually individually EQing every single one of those subs to give you all of it. I don't know.
Give you all this stuff.
I think building a rectangular room would be cheaper than this, but who knows what's actually going on. But anyway, it's kind of cool to have the whole 24. I don't know if those screen left and right speakers are really going to be playing anything, because you in the full 24 speaker setup, you have the center speaker, then you have the left center speaker and the right center speaker, and then you have the screen left speaker and the screen right speaker, and all 5 of those go behind the screen.
Where do you put the 10 subs? So you got the 4 corners, the midpoint of the 4 walls. Then you've got 2 extra subs. Where do those go? Or do you put the subs in the 4? No, that doesn't make sense.
There are a heck of a lot of people who believe that like each of the front speakers should have its own individual sub. I bet they're doing something like that. But yeah. There's 9 speakers in the front if you're counting the wides among as front speakers. So maybe each of those 9 speakers up front has its own sub, and then there's one LFE sub.
You sit on it.
I don't know. But anyway, I do think it's cool doing the full 24.10. You couldn't do it before until this expansion module came out, so good on them. Hooray.
Okay. Hooray. Dennis has a Blu-ray player that's about 5 years old now and starting to act up. He was thinking about getting an Xbox One anyway, but how is the Xbox One in terms of operational noise when using it as a Blu-ray player? He remembers how the original Xbox and Xbox 360 were both pretty noisy, both the fan and the disc drive spinning. So how does the Xbox One stack up? I think it's great. It's very quiet.
It's definitely quieter. It's the quietest console they've ever built, that's for sure.
That is by far. And I think it's quieter than
PlayStations.
I was going to say, it's definitely quieter than my PlayStation 3. For sure, 100%. Now, is this quiet as some Ultra HD Blu-ray players? I can't hear the Xbox or the Ultra HD Blu-ray player from where I sit. I sit about 8 feet away. That's my guess based on looking at it or where I am right now. So, I mean, how close are you going to sit to this thing? It's real quiet.
Yeah, it's, I suppose, I think my Oppo is a bit quieter, but you can't get an Oppo anymore. The Panasonic UB820 that has sort of become the heir apparent to the Oppos isn't quite as heavy and sturdy as the Oppo was. So, yeah, I think the Xbox One is a pretty darn good in that sense. Its fan for the system is very quiet. They put in a huge honking fan so it doesn't have to spin super fast. Yeah, and the disc drive itself, Ultra HD Blu-rays do spin faster than original Blu-rays did, but that's going to be about the same for any Ultra HD Blu-ray player. Yeah, I think it's a pretty good choice.
Jonathan enjoyed a training seminar that Harman offered at CEDIA this year that is all about using multiple subwoofers and their sound field management measurement system to deliver seat-to-seat consistency. Jonathan was not surprised by the information, since it's right in line with what we repeated on AVRant, but they did talk a bit about efficiency, which we haven't talked a ton about on the podcast. Mainly, they pointed out that in a rectangular room, if you put a subwoofer at the midpoint of each of the 4 walls, you get the very best consistency, but the overall output level is not as high. So you need higher output subwoofers. Meanwhile, if you put 4 subwoofers in the 4 corners of the room, it's not quite as consistent from seat to seat, although still very good. but it's way more efficient in terms of output level, so the subs themselves wouldn't have to work as hard with that placement. They also noticed that one sub in one corner was good in terms of efficiency, very bad in terms of consistency. So can we elaborate a bit on that subject? Yes. Putting the subs in the corners gives them boundary reinforcement, which makes them louder, basically.
9 decibels louder than just out in a wide open field that only has a floor and no walls or ceiling.
So
put it in a corner, you get 9 decibels more output.
Putting them in the middle of a wall. So think about it. Put them in the corner. You've got a surface underneath them and a surface to either side that is reflecting everything and reinforcing. In the middle of the room, you've got a surface beside them and a surface behind them. But there's without the corner, there's really not as much area that's very, very close to them. So yeah, nothing they said is wrong.
No, definitely not.
But it's a rare case, I think, when your room and the subwoofers you have chosen are such at the break point of this efficiency versus consistency thing, where you're like, well, this sub can be fine if you put it in the corner, but it's not going to be good enough if you put it in the middle of the wall.
But that's coming from us, where we're always looking for subs that genuinely extend down to 20 hertz. And
that's
once
true.
you have that, they almost necessarily have pretty good output as well. There
Right.
are lots of people using less expensive, smaller subwoofers than that. And yes, maybe they only play down to 25 or 30 or 32 hertz or something
Right.
like that. But in those cases, using them in, like 3,000 cubic feet, that is technically the beginning of what we would term a large room, but it's by no means out of the question. There's lots of rooms that are 3,000 cubic feet, and maybe you're using a sub that really only plays down to like 30 hertz or so. And output-wise, it would struggle if you put it in the middle of a wall.
Right.
So sticking it in a corner could definitely help you. No question.
We just don't run into it very often.
Not on this podcast.
Not on this
We're a
podcast.
different crowd running around here. But yeah, no, that's all correct information. Yeah, I mean, 4 subs in 4 corners to me is very convenient, right? Your corners are often the space that's available
And the
anyway.
consistency differences aren't that big, I don't think.
They're not that big, no.
They're I don't think that you're giving up a whole lot. And what normally ends up happening, at least it's rarely the case that somebody comes to us and says, I can put subs either in the midpoints of my walls or in the corners. Which one should I choose?
Right.
If people say that, we would normally say midpoints of the walls because we know the consistency is better, and then point them to a sub that would have no problems doing that.
Right.
But oftentimes the case is that I can put the sub in this corner or that corner. We're going to say, okay, both. Thank you very much.
And furthermore, the person, usually there's one person in this theater who cares about this.
Right.
It's the guy who put together the theater, and he has his one primary seat where he always sits.
Right.
And he's like, I would like for when other people come over for it not to be a wildly different experience from seat to seat.
Right.
But if it's like super consistent and you have an entire audience of super critical people, then you're like, well, I got to put it at the 4 midpoints and I got to have 4 subs that can handle this room size because that's the crowd I'm playing to. But most of the people we get are like, I would really like it to play loud and thumping and stonking, but I would still like it to have nice frequency response and still be reasonably consistent. It's like, yeah, put them in two of them in diagonally opposite corners, right? Which is what we always say.
I want them to cost $300.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, well. All right. Yeah. All right. So Karl says, do the new 4K resolution projectors that JVC announced have HDMI 2.1?
No.
I do not know. Nope.
They flatly do not. And
All right.
also, why would you need that? You don't need it. The bandwidth is all there in HDMI 2.0.
Is 2.1 out though? Do they have hardware for that yet? No. So
this people are so worried about 2.1. I'm like, so the one thing is, gamers,
I'm worried about 2.2. 2.2 is going to be where it's at.
Gamers who are super wanting the variable refresh rate thing.
Right.
I mean, that's now that can be implemented on HDMI 2.0 because that's not a bandwidth thing. And so that's what Samsung is doing right now. That's what the Xbox One X is doing right now, is implementing the variable refresh rate. Now they're using AMD's FreeSync version of it because that's what exists. but they could implement the, I don't even know what it's called, version that is specified in HDMI 2.1, but that can be done on an HDMI 2.0 connection. So if you're worried about the variable refresh rate, but these projectors don't support variable refresh rate anyway, so that feature's out of the question. You don't have to worry about enhanced audio return channel because it's a projector and it doesn't have any streaming services built into it. So what do you need HDMI 2.1 for in a projector? I mean, unless it did variable refresh rate. If that's the thing you're worried about, there are no projectors that do variable refresh rate at this moment, so no. And you don't need it.
Right. Somebody right now is like, HDMI 2.2? Thompson support.
Maybe they'll jump to 3. Maybe they'll be like ATSC and there won't be a 3 and they'll just jump to 4 instead of, ATSC went from 1 to 3. There was no ATSC 2.
Yeah, so who's this guy again? Karl. What about how long it takes for them to handshake with source devices? Karl hates how long it takes his X750 to handshake every time the signal changes. So have JVC improved that on their new 4K projectors? I've not seen them, but I'm going to say no.
I mean, the answer, we don't know.
We don't know.
But
I would
production models aren't even out there yet. These were the... Yeah.
I would assume not, and the reason reason is because I have yet to come across the instant preview, all this other stuff that's supposed to have made things all better, so that they switches faster between things. It doesn't work when the problem is that the source you're using goes from one resolution to a different resolution. It does not switch. That handshake has to be
lots of devices can handshake faster than the JVCs. Like almost every other projector out there handshakes faster than the JVCs did. It was an issue. I mean, to me, it was something I would accept. It was worth it because nothing else gives you the black levels and contrast of a JVC projector, at least not anywhere close to this price point. But yeah, it was an issue. I understand hating how slow they are to handshake because it's like over 30 seconds, which is egregious.
That is real long.
That is real long. Truth is, we don't know. I would hope that with the true 4K resolution, they maybe have a higher powered processor in the thing, which maybe would help this situation. It is an entirely new chassis design, so if they ever were going to use new HDMI chips versus having just carried over the HDMI chips they used for like 3 years in a row in all their previous models, now would be the time. So it's not out of the question. I wouldn't give up all hope, but also can't confirm that it is because we just don't know.
Right. Alex has heard about bias lighting. He understands the idea of having a dim light behind your TV to prevent eye fatigue, but he's seeing lots of photos of projector screens with LED lights around the edges, with some of them calling it bias lighting. First of all, sir, get off of APS forum. Just step away.
Well, these days, even if you just go to like Elite Screens or something, they have images with
I know, but I think that's
LED
like when
trim
you go to
lighting.
yeah, I think that's just people wanting their screens to look nice. You know what I mean?
I mean, they do mostly describe it as the ambience effect. Some of them kind of do the Philips Ambilight thing where they can change in response to what's happening on the screen.
I hate that.
Oh, I would not want that. That would
I hate that a lot.
Kill that with fire. No.
Yeah. So for the rest of you guys that are out there, what is bias lighting? Bias lighting is this idea that you put a soft light that's a neutral. What is it? What is it?
D65.
D65.
6500 Kelvin.
So basically what this is it's just a soft light right around the edge of your screen that's supposed to hit the back wall and just sort of glow back there, so that when you go from a very dark to a very light image, that you're not squinting. Essentially, it keeps your eyes from your irises from opening way up, so that you can just so you can see those dark scenes. It allows you to it's fine. I got no problems with bias lighting. I personally
I'm a fan of bias lighting. I use bias lighting myself.
I do not, and I have no intention of ever starting. So
but you have a projector and I have a flat panel, so
that is true. So I it's fine. It's fine.
Oh, bias lighting totally makes sense, but bias lighting with a projector. That's and he asks, he's like, if you've gone to the trouble, you completely black out your theater, and you've got a projection setup, then is there any benefit to having an LED light around the perimeter of your projector screen?
No. I mean, I can't imagine why you would want to do that, but that's just me.
So it's kind of interesting because like Joe Kane, who's if there's anybody who's picky about video,
right,
it's Joe Kane. and he's a huge proponent of using projectors, and he is not against having a bias light with a projector screen. Of all the people you would expect to be totally against it, he is not against it. However, there is a super huge caveat with that, which is that the rest of your room, like when we say blacked out, we're not talking you can turn all the lights out and there are no windows and there's no lights, fixtures. No, blacked out means the whole room is covered in black velvet. Because
not over the top at all.
Joe Kane will not accept a light from any source other than the projector striking any surface of the room and finding its way onto the screen. The only light hitting the screen must be from the projector in Joe Kane's world. And frankly, in an ideal world, I completely agree with that. Now you're saying we have this other source of light. It's behind the screen. So as long as it is strictly contained to being behind the screen, that's okay, because that light is never finding its way back onto the screen.
Because it's not bouncing around, because it hits that velvet and it's just absorbed.
But that's the only way you could achieve that, because if your walls are anything other than black velvet, some of the light will reflect off of the wall and find its way back onto the front of the screen, which is unacceptable. It will begin to wash out your image. So bias lighting behind a projector screen, strictly speaking, could be okay, but the lengths you have to go to for the rest of your room. Now, me, I don't want it. I don't want ambient light in a projection setup. I want the room as dark as it can be. I want as close to the situation of the only light hitting the screen being the projector. That's what I want. And the chances of your room being completely draped in black velvet, and heck, I'm worried about, you know, how dark is your skin, and have you put in demon contact lenses so that the whites of your eyes aren't reflecting any light back onto the screen, you know? Let's go to these lengths.
Demon contact lenses. That's what I would dress up for Halloween. I'm a demon from Supernatural. See? Black
That's right.
Done.
There you go.
But that can't cost too much. How much can those things cost?
No, those aren't too bad. I don't think you can see through them very well.
I wouldn't think so.
Wouldn't expect it. But yeah, no, I'm not a fan of this. Mostly when you see the marketing, they are talking about, you know, the ambient look of it. Oh, isn't it fancy to have a red light shining behind your skin? I don't want that crap.
No. Josh. No, wait. No, yes, Josh. Mm-hmm. Yes, Josh. Josh found an article in the High Def Digest that details a trade-in program offered by Denon. The article notes how there's no mention of trade-ins anywhere on Denon's website, but apparently if you call their customer service phone line, it's possible to trade in Denon gear that is less than 5 years old, as long as you have the original receipt from an authorized retailer. Do we know anything about this? Is it legit? I do not know anything about this, and I do not know if it is legit, but it doesn't sound legit. I mean, it sounds like somebody made this up, and it sounds like a thing that people are talking about. But I mean, if it's real, then it's real.
I hadn't heard about it before. I don't know what the details are. I've never tried to do it myself. However, certainly can't hurt to just call Denon customer service and be like, "Hey, I own a, I don't know, Denon X2300W. Is there any way I could trade that into you for a newer model?" And if they say no, then that's that. And if they say yes, then great. The can't hurt to give them a call. The worst they can tell you is no.
That's right.
Yeah, but it does seem to be only on new products. You do have to have the receipt from an authorized retailer, which a lot of people don't hold on to that, although you can usually call up your retailer and get a copy of receipt if you bought it with a credit card.
Good luck.
But
I've had that problem before with the Target. When my wife's mom passed away, we had to provide the receipt to Apple for her iPad that we were trying to get unlocked. Mm-hmm. And we had to go to Target to try to get the receipt reprinted out. Boy, they would look at us like, "How long ago did you buy it?" I'm like, "Listen, please."
But, Denon does sell their products directly on their website.
Yeah.
So it's certainly not impossible. I would think this is entirely a possible thing. And the example they gave, someone traded in an X6200W, so that's going back a couple, 3 years now, and put it towards one of the brand new X8500Hs, and they basically gave them the amount of, like, it was almost the full selling price of the 6200W originally. So that's a pretty good deal if it's true.
Yeah, there you go.
Give them a call. Yeah.
Andrew, this comes from Facebook. Andrew has a couple of Paradigm subs. For frequent response, they list 18 Hertz DIN.
Yes, they do.
What does that mean? Do his subs really hit 18 hertz or not? They do, in a very specific situation that is in no way...
They make sound down there.
No way will it be experienceable in your room. I forget what DIN stands for. I always forget.
Well, so do I, because it's Deutsche something. It's a German specification.
German. Basically, it's a specification they like to use because it makes everything look real good.
Yep. The extension looks like a lower number. It's basically the -10 decibel point.
Yeah.
This is more or less what it's equivalent to. So we look for what's the -3 decibel point. DIN is essentially the -10 decibel point. So yes, it's still making sound. It's about 10 decibels quieter than the average of all the frequencies that are higher. Yeah, I guess it's the sort of thing like stick it in the corner and you get that 9 dB boost from the boundary reinforcement. Maybe that's kind of what they were going after. They do call it a real world figure. So they're talking about shoving it in a corner.
Yeah, real world or in-room response. Sometimes they'll call it stuff like that. But
yeah, 18 hertz DIN is not what we would call, like, it's certainly not -3 at 18 hertz, which is what we'd be looking for. We're looking for -3 at 20 hertz. That's what we're looking for in a sub. That's what we
When I see DIN, I usually add like 7 hertz, maybe 10.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends, right? Because octaves go by every doubling of frequency is an octave. So the lower that number is, then the less you have to add to go up there. But no, you're not hitting 18 hertz at like linear response. Right. Definitely not. -10 there.
So he tried playing his Paradigm speakers without subs, and they seem to reach pretty low, definitely lower than 80 hertz. Why should he use an 80 hertz crossover when... which is what we always seem to suggest. Because your speakers are not placed well, first of all, where are your speakers? Are they symmetrically placed across the room from each other, which is where the subwoofers in the low bass needs to be? Because if you want your speakers to play low bass, they need to be placed in the same place that we tell you to place subwoofers. Now, you may find that your stereo imaging suffers a little bit.
Having when you one speaker at the front of the room and one speaker at the back of the room?
Yeah, that's gonna be a problem. But
usually where your front left and right go.
That will allow you to lower your crossover lower than 80 hertz. So if you're willing to make that sacrifice on stereo imaging, then yes, go ahead and lower that crossover as much as you want there, Haas.
Yeah, all the stuff we talk about with multiple subwoofers, with crossover frequencies, with automatic room equalization, all that stuff, that is not to do with how low is my speaker capable of outputting sound. It has nothing to do with that. No. Now, there's a caveat
Lee,
to that.
are you listening? Lee, are you listening?
There's an exception to that I will accept, which is that you do not have a room and you sit suspended 55 feet in the air. Because if that is your situation, you have no walls, no ceiling, and you and your speakers are all suspended 55 feet in the air by magical levitation, then none of the stuff we talk about applies. The stuff we talk about only applies if you're in a room, and in a relatively small room at that. This applies very little in an amphitheater,
right?
But in anything that would be in a house would be considered, acoustically speaking, a small room. And a small room is any room where one of the dimensions of the room is shorter than any of the wavelengths of the sound that you're playing. And a 20 hertz wavelength is about 55 feet long, which is why you'd have to be 55 feet in the air to not have any sort of reflections happening from that frequency that are reaching your ear before the direct sound is completely past your ear. So in any kind of room, the sound goes past your ear, it bounces off the wall, and it comes back all before the sound has even created one full cycle in that deep bass. And that tends to happen anywhere below 80 hertz because most of us have 8 to 10 foot ceilings. So that dimension of the room is closing in to that frequency. So doesn't matter how low your speakers can play. They could play down to 10 hertz. We'd still tell you to call them small and set them to an 80 hertz crossover because you want all of that bass to be handled by speakers that are positioned within the room to work with the room and not against it and give you good seat-to-seat consistency like we were talking about with Harman.
Right. So, yeah, I was being a little flippant before, but the idea here is that in order to get the bass to be as smooth as you can across all your seats, you need to have your subwoofers placed in the proper place. But in order to have good stereo imaging, you need to have your speakers placed in the proper place. Well, your speakers, while they may be able to play lower, they are not placed optimally for bass. And so you can either place them in the right place for stereo imaging, which is what you're going to do because that's what they're really good at. And then you're going to let yes, I know. Well, why did I buy this speaker that can go so low? I don't know why you brought that speaker that can go so low. I got them too.
If it can play super low, it can probably play louder than speakers that can't play as low. They often go hand in hand, those things.
And this is why I say about my own speakers, I wish I had bookshelves and not towers. I do not need towers.
You don't need the output. Yep.
I don't need the output. I'm sitting close enough. There's no reason for me to have towers in this room. Now, does that mean that they're wasted? No. I mean, they still can play louder than, other speakers that are smaller or whatever. But, and then I guess you could say, well, they have an integrated stand. And then maybe someday I will move to a different house, though my wife says that we're going to downsize afterwards. I'm like, well, I'm sleeping in the home theater, so where are you going to sleep? So there's, it's okay for you to have these larger speakers and cross them over. You're not missing anything. You're trying to get the best sound, and sometimes the best to do that, you have to do things that don't intuitively make sense.
That's why we're able to repeat this for years on end, because intuitively it doesn't make sense. I mean, my approach to setting up a stereo speaker system is to not play the speakers at first at all. I want a pair or quad subwoofers. I want to set those up to give me great consistency and linearity for all the bass up to where the crossover is truly going to hand off. So I actually want those subs to play nice and consistent and linear above 80 hertz because they're still producing sound, certainly up to at least 160 hertz, an octave above that. I get that nailed down first. Then I bring my speakers in, which is the polar opposite of what most of the magazines and stuff that are like, oh, don't even use subwoofers. Get speakers that can play super low. They're not going to play the bass properly, not if you're in a room.
All right, lastly, he says, we've also said to set the subwoofer output setting in his Denon receiver to just LFE, not LFE+Main. Why? Well, because you only want your subs to play the LFE channel. You don't want your main speakers to try to play the LFE channel as well. Isn't that what that means? I always forget.
There's that side of it, and there's also LFE+Main is for when you have set your front speakers to large.
That's true. Yeah.
And now, so if you set your front speakers to large, then the signals that are in the front left and right channels are solely played by the front left and right speakers, and nothing else plays any of that bass.
Right.
That's the normal setup. If you use the LFE+Main setting, the subwoofer can duplicate some of the bass that is in those full range front left and right channels if you set your front left and right speakers too large. But we tell you to never set your front left and right speakers too large. I guess you could say the one time when you might is like in Gene's setup, where he has front left and right speakers that can genuinely play all the way down to 20 hertz, and then he also has additional subwoofers in other parts of the room. So,
and he has a non-rectangular room too, so
that's right.
Placement of subwoofers becomes much less standardized and much more
so in
variable.
That specific type of instance, then his front left and right speakers are essentially just acting like additional subwoofers.
And the other thing you could say is if you had truly full range down to 18 hertz speakers, and you place them in optimally for stereo imaging, and then you bought two subs and put them at the back of the room in the mirrored positions of your front left and right speakers, well then yes, you can do that as well. Your speakers are paradigms, and I have not yet met a paradigm speaker that can play all the way down to 20 hertz. So
they
you're
should
not
be
in that
set
situation.
Small.
They are small.
Yep.
They are small.
And so once you have all of your speakers set to small, actually Denon and Marantz do a great job of this right in their setup menu. They tell the description. It says when it's set to LFE, it will say the LFE channel and the bass from all speaker channels that are set to small will be played by the subwoofer. So since all of your speakers will have been set to small, if you follow our recommendations, you want just the LFE setting. There's no need for the LFE+Main setting because your main speakers are not set to large. And like Tom said, you also do not want to send the dedicated LFE channel to small front, left, and right speakers. So LFE only. All speakers set to small.
Did you hear that, Lee?
Poor Lee. He knows. There's budgets to consider.
I don't want to hear about his budgets. He had an OLED TV for like 5.5 minutes.
He did.
I don't want to hear about it. PJ. So PJ had to have some plumbing work done in his theater room, so he unplugged everything and had it all disconnected for a couple of weeks. When the work was done, he put everything back, but now there's no signal coming out of his Denon X2200W's HDMI outputs. He's tried both HDMI outputs, multiple HDMI cables, and connecting different displays. Nothing. He tried the factory reset procedure described in the manual where you hold down some buttons on the front panel. No dice. So any ideas of at all? His absorptive cat wants her theater back.
Yes, that was PJ, and we called his cat his absorption.
That is a
pud.
2200W, and nothing coming out of the HDMI cables. Yeah. He's tried multiple. He's tried. Let me see. Different.
Both of the HDMI outputs, because he's got two of them. They're mirrored, but he's tried both. Nothing.
He's tried the cables and different
cables.
Displays.
Nothing. Different displays. Nothing. He did the full factory reset, so you hold down the power button and the, I don't know, it's like the preset plus and the preset minus on the, specifically on the X2200. You like hold those down until the front panel says initializing, and then you let it all go and it completely resets itself. He did all that. Still nothing coming out of the HDMI output.
Busted, dude. It's busted.
I mean, I would have told you about the factory reset. That's my. I don't know. I mean, all he did was unplug it and then plug it back in a couple weeks later. I have no idea what could have gone wrong here. But in my opinion, it's time to call Denon. And
yeah, that's what I would do too. I mean, at this point, you have to call Denon and find out if they have any troubleshooting that they can do. For example, I mean, I was talking earlier about my brother and his PS3. When my parents got the new PS3, they plugged it into their TV in their bedroom to make sure that it worked, and it worked fine. But then they took it back to his bedroom and plugged it in, and it suddenly doesn't work. So they call me to go over there and fix it. I'm like, oh yeah, I've run into this before. My dad looked at me like I'd gone nuts. I'm like, dude, that's all I do is answer questions on this podcast all the time. I have run into this before. Your TV is 1080p. His TV is not. It's set itself to 1080p because of your TV. So when you plug it in, when you transfer rooms, it doesn't know. So I went back and plugged it into their TV, set it down to 720p, went to his room, works fine. But this does not sound like that. This
if you've done the full factory reset, out of the box, you connect the HDMI cable to the main HDMI output, plug it into virtually any television, and after the factory reset, you should get something. You should get the Denon menu that comes up. Yeah, if you're getting I don't know what could have possibly gone wrong, but HDMI boards do fail on occasion. This is not unheard of by any means.
I mean, are you sure it didn't get wet with all this plumbing work being done or something? Somebody had spilled something on it? Because that's the only thing I can hear.
Yeah.
I can understand, you're getting an upgrade, boss. Tell your cat. You're getting an upgrade.
But yeah, it's time to call Denon. I wish we had something easier to tell you to do, but the factory reset would have been our thing.
That would have been it, yeah. All right, Brian. I never thought we were going to get this low in these questions.
I know. We're trucking along. That's good. I got plenty of questions that came in yesterday on Monday, so we're all right.
Well, I didn't read this low. The question list I gave up before this.
We'll be okay.
Brian recently bought a new house. It has a large basement, 2,300 square feet, not cubic feet, and it's all open concept. It's fully furnished. It's a large basement.
It's like 18,000 cubic feet if it's a standard ceiling height.
And it already includes a theater area, although it's definitely not a dedicated theater room since it's wide open. He's already got plans for a pair of high output subwoofers, and he's using a 102-inch projection screen with an Epson 3020 projector. He's got RBH front speakers, and there are 4 in-ceiling RBH speakers installed that were intended to be surrounds and surround backs. Ooh. Okay.
It's okay. It's okay.
He's sitting far enough away, though, that they're basically positioned perfectly for Atmos. And he's got an Onkyo TX NR787 that can do 5.2.4. So, he was thinking that he'd like to add a pair of on-wall surround speakers, but RBH Ultra-1 on-walls are only sold through RBH dealers, and there are none close to him. So can we recommend any on-wall speakers that will be similarly slim and timbre match nicely with the rest of the RBH speakers? Everything that doesn't suck matches well with RBH speakers.
Everything that's quite neutral.
Yeah. So I like in this case, I would go with the Focal Birds. One of those would be nice.
The Super Birds.
Oh yeah, if you want to go big ones. Oh, it's a big room. I forgot.
It's a
big room. The big birds, the yellow ones, the big birds.
The big birds, yeah. But yeah, no, accessories for less. They sell the Super Birds, and they are still running their buy one, get one free. So you can't beat that. So $300 will get you a pair of Focal Superbirds. Those would be a fantastic choice for this application. And you can order them online and have them delivered for $300 for a pair. I don't think you can beat that.
I don't think you can either. But if you really want RBH speakers, you can call them.
Yep.
There have been people on this podcast who have called RBH to get their speakers because they got nobody around them. They're like, well, do you want to be a dealer? And they're like, I'm not going to sell speakers. You're like, well, sell them to yourself.
Do you want to be
a dealer and get dealer pricing? The answer to that question is yes.
Yes, I do.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Weldon.
RBH does sell direct. They sell all their Impression series speakers direct, and it is possible to get speakers from RBH. Little bit of a workaround there.
Weldon on Twitter. Rob's impromptu road trip down to Phoenix for a TV inspired Weldon to pull the trigger on his own TV purchase, but he drove to Canada to get it, where the electrons flow in the opposite direction, so he has to have an adapter.
I will say several people did seem to enjoy my little story, so thank you, everyone.
My wife just shook her head when she heard it, but she's like, that guy's weird. I'm like, I know!
You think? Is there no evidence? Over how many years have I been hosted 2 hours a week, hosted this pod? Is there any evidence that I'm a bit of a weirdo?
No. Yeah, I thought you were normal until that. Before that, I thought you were just this all an act. All right, but he wants a 75-inch screen at a reasonable price, and he doesn't want to drive 46 hours to get it. He's in Canada. And there don't seem to be any Canadian retailers listing the new Vizio P series. So any other suggestions? I mean, where in Canada do you live? Do you live like real close to the border? You could drive across the border.
You could head down to a Best Buy. There's plenty of them.
Plenty of them
range of the
Best
border
Buy.
if you're anywhere close to the border. Yep.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I would do.
right this moment, everywhere seems to be out of stock on the 75-inch P75.
Did we already talk about this TV? We talked about this
We did,
TV
because
earlier. Okay.
I mean, well, when you want 75 inches at a reasonable price,
there's only one game
it's the Vizio P series. Yeah. Now, they do still have some of the older Vizio P series, which I think goes way back to the C, because they didn't update it for a good couple of years. So I don't think there was a D or an E in the P series. I think it skipped all the way from C to F at the end there of the model name. But yeah, there is, you can still get the 75 P75C. I don't know if it's a 0 or a 1 or whatever the heck is at the end there. You can still get those in Canada, but they aren't as bright as the F1. So one place I really like to recommend buying products when you're in Canada is B&H Photo. Now, they are an American retailer, but they are super duper good about shipping to Canada. So they will list things in Canadian dollars. They will give you the completely 100% landed price. All the duties, if there are any border fees, taxes, everything already charged up front. So when it arrives at your door, that's it. There's nothing else for you to pay. There's no extra payment once the thing arrives. Prices are really good. They have the full selection of American products. Back in many years ago, I actually bought my 70-inch Sharp TV, which I'm now looking to sell. I bought that from B&H, had it delivered, and their system has only gotten better. Like back then, they didn't list everything even as upfront on the website, and they've only gotten better shipping to Canada. So I highly recommend Canadian buyers, if you can't get it in Canada, do look to B&H Photo. That's bhphotovideo.com. I don't know if that new Vizio P series will be showing up in Canada. Like I say, it's kind of out of stock everywhere in the US right now, so it might yet show up in Canada. But yeah, that's my recommendation. I don't know. The next step up is like Sony's X900F, which is like double the price. It has like half the dimming zones. So, I don't know. There's nothing kind of in between those two that's a good alternative.
All right, we'll do one more because Mike's question is way too...
My question is very long, but we can definitely do Chris's.
Yeah. Chris wants to start playing with Room EQ Wizard, and he's considering getting a calibrated UMIC 1 from Cross Spectrum Labs. He knows that Cross Spectrum also sells a calibrated SPL meter. Chris already owns one of the old Radio Shack SPL meters. Does he need a new one, or will this Radio Shack meter do just fine? I bet if you called Herb over at Cross Spectrum Labs, he'd say, yeah, you don't need to put in these things. Just get the UMIC 1, you'll be fine. So I don't know why you would need a calibrated SPL meter. I mean, what are you doing with it other than making sure that your speakers are level matched? Which you could. I mean,
they do sell stuff that's like literally for legal purposes. So
right.
Maybe something like that.
Noise measurements.
Yeah.
Outside, just noise complaints and those sorts of things. But I don't see any reason why you need a calibrated.
No. Now,
SPL
playing
meter.
around with Room EQ Wizard, you're mostly concerned with relative things, right?
Yeah.
You're concerned with, I took a measurement of my current setup, then I changed something in my setup. I changed an EQ setting, or I added acoustic treatments, or I moved a speaker position, whatever the change was, measured again. And what you're interested in is the difference between measurement 1 and measurement 2. So the absolute sound pressure level of the microphone, which you can calibrate in Room EQ Wizard. You can calibrate it against an SPL meter, but it doesn't even have to be super duper accurate for you to still get the benefit of comparing measurement 1 versus measurement 2, because that's what you're really interested in. Now, on the front of calibrating the SPL level within Room EQ Wizard by comparing what the microphone is measuring versus what an SPL meter is measuring, the Radio Shack SPL meter actually does a fantastic job of that.
Yeah.
The Radio Shack meter was really popular because it wasn't completely accurate in an absolute sense, but its inaccuracies were very consistent,
Yeah.
which meant it was easy to create an offset table, which is actually built into Room EQ Wizard. They have an offset table for the Radio Shack SPL meter because it was so well known and so consistent in its inaccuracy. So you're good to go. And yeah, like you say, if you talk to Herb, he would tell you the same. He's not a guy who's gonna sell you any snake oil and try to upsell you on something you don't need. So you're in good shape, Chris.
All right, so that's the podcast for this week. Who do we have left? Just that one dude? What's his name?
We just have Mike on the list. And like I say, I did receive quite a few emails on the Monday, but I don't have those names in front of me, but I did receive those, and they'll be on the list for next week.
All right, we're going to thank our listeners of the week. We're going to thank Richard and Jeff for going to www.avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. We also want to thank our 70 patrons over at patreon.com. So thank you to all of you.
Yes, Richard and Jeff, thank you very much for those donations. And to our 70 patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast. That's very nice of you, and thank you so much.
We also thank Heath for talking us up to his calibrator. And we'll thank 2A, who hopefully I will get in contact with this week to figure out what the heck is wrong with our website.
He did have your direct email address in the message, so it should be somewhere in your inbox there.
It's there. It is there.
Cool.
In fact, I could probably go look at it right now, but I've already forgotten about it. Here it
Well,
is,
2A,
right
thank you very much for that. I hope we can track that down, because it is ridiculous for our little website to be exceeding its bandwidth every month. Makes no sense.
What's going on with that?
And Heath, thanks for talking us up there to your calibrator. And yeah, maybe we'll get some new listeners, get talked up on AVS Forum of all places. And then when they come over here, they'll be like,
why is that guy
kind of diss AVS Forum a lot on this podcast? So nuts to these guys.
That might
we
be
do
the
it all
case.
in good
That's
fun.
fine. That's fine. I did watch Deadpool 2, the extended version.
Oh, I haven't
last
seen the
night.
extended version.
So the extended version is actually more than just add scenes. Like some of the jokes are different.
Yep. The alternate takes.
Alternate takes and that sort of stuff. I don't necessarily like all the jokes. And some of the music's different too, I believe.
Oh.
Which
well, maybe because they changed the link, so they had to rescore some of it in that.
Yeah, maybe. But I didn't necessarily like all the musical choices or the joke differences. There were some longer fight scenes which were nice, and some differences there, but it's just fine. I think the original is good. The one thing that they did do is they cut out a lot of the backstory of what's the boy's name again?
I don't remember the boy's name.
Russell.
Could be.
Yeah.
Rings
Anyways,
a
they
bell.
cut out some of his backstory, which after I watched the original movie, I'm like, yeah, I kind of caught all that. I kind of got the gist of his backstory, after they edited out all of the stuff that actually showed up. I can understand why they edited it out. It was nice to have it in there, but it wasn't super mandatory.
I wasn't super hype on that character anyway, so
Yeah.
I don't really need more of him in the movie.
Yeah. So apparently they agreed with you.
All right. Well,
All right.
I just, on the content tip, I just wanted to say real quick, I've been trying to clear out my DVR because the new TV season is coming along. Woo-hoo! And man, oh man, I need to clear out the DVR. Not as though people don't have enough to watch already, but Crazy Ex-Girlfriend is a really good show. It's a really good show.
Crazy Ex-Girlfriend.
It's really good. Underappreciated. So if you want something a little bit off the beaten path that deserves more praise than it's gotten, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, check it out.
Yeah, I'm stuck watching Cougar Town with my wife.
Oh yeah,
she loves that show. I mean, it's not a great show, but it's just light enough and for her to just sit there and zone out for half an hour and then go to bed. And I'm like, well, I'll watch the last 5 minutes of it without you, I guess. Good night. Good night. All right. That's it. Just remember, to get your questions answered, your AV and home theater questions answered, email us at question@avrant.com. For AVRant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.